We can get the, there we go. We get the audio figured out, but we really appreciate everybody taking some time to come out and hang out with us today. My name is James Gaskin. I'm with Renovo Financial, and then we partnered with the folks at VentureStack to put this event on, and we want to continue to do these. So we appreciate your support. Maybe start off with an introduction for the VentureStack team. So all the VentureStack folks, maybe stand up. And we got Mike Kehoe, Tim McGarvey, and then their team. So for anybody who's not getting deals from the VentureStack folks or on the deal list, you guys definitely should connect with these folks. They're putting out some great deals and trying to get some opportunities out to the community. So definitely appreciate them. And then the Renovo team, just want to have our guys stand up. Scott is in the back there. Raise your hand, Scott. There he is. So Scott's our local lender, and he runs our business here in the Triangle. We lend money to real estate investors, and many of you folks are clients, and we appreciate you coming out. If you haven't met Scott, and you please do, and go say hello, and we'd love to see if we can be helpful. But tonight, we wanted to bring you all together with the idea of really, there's a lot of real estate meetup groups. Most of them end up kind of catering to the folks that are trying to learn the business, and we felt like maybe we could create a platform for folks that are professional operators and give you folks an opportunity to connect with each other and hopefully get a little value from the conversations that we might have up here today. So that's the idea. If you enjoy yourselves tonight, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you back out next time. But to get it going tonight, we want to thank Jim Allen for coming and speaking with us today. Jim was very kind to offer some of his time at the last event, and we thought it went so well that we decided maybe we'd have more of a one-on-one conversation this time and give Jim an opportunity to maybe drop some value on you guys. So that's the idea. Hopefully we pull it off. And Jim, you want to introduce yourself and your team and anything else you want to say, please do.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur is basically what I do for a living. I've got the biggest real estate team in the world, which helps me do the other things I do. But believe it or not, that's not where I make the majority of my money. The way I make the majority of my money is investing in things similar to what you guys are doing. I'm either developing, tearing something down, or investing behind builders. I don't do quite as much in the commercial realm as a lot of you guys, although a lot of what I do, I don't consider commercial, but a lot of other folks consider what I do commercial, because deals in land to me really are residential unless my application is more commercial. But anyway, that's kind of what I do. We develop about 11,000 lots a year in my little group, and I back 23 custom builders in the Triangle. I've got 225 of them that build with me and buy lots from me. I do a little bit of stuff with about 4 of the national builders. Not a big fan. It's not really what I do. I try to do things that bring value back to the local market. And one of the things I realize is when you're doing things with a lot of the big national builders, they don't really do anything in a Triangle other than take the labor away. They don't really buy and spend here. So I try to do the things I do with people who are interested from a local perspective more.
Awesome. We really appreciate you coming out, Jim. I think, who here knew Jim before this event? Yeah. You've made quite an impression on the market, Jim, and we do appreciate having you out. I wanted to start, maybe just kind of talking a little bit about the market. I know, beginning of the year, everybody's looking forward to 2024. I think a lot of folks are glad to see 2023 in the rearview mirror. And what I wanted to maybe just start with that, a look back, how'd last year go, and maybe how did that differ from what you were thinking it would be at this time a year ago?
Midway through the year last year, nobody knew interest rates were going to spike like they did in August. So that was a big turning point. And, I think we've dealt with this. It's been a big political thing more than it has anything else. And unfortunately, we as consumers are the victims of what's going on politically between a couple of parties. You know, neither side wants the other one to win, unfortunately. I try to do my best no matter who wins in environments, but you know, sometimes interest rates get in the way of that. So I would tell you, through August or through August 8th, when really rates went crazy, through August 8th, everything was going right according to plan. First home buyers were buying houses, second home buyers were buying houses. You know, the top end was super healthy. Well, the minute those rates went up, the only part of the market that continued to soar was the very top of the market, which I've never experienced in my 40 years of real estate in the Triangle. I've never seen the top end of the market be healthier than the bottom end of the market, but it truly was from about August 8th until December 22nd. And if you don't know that things changed December 22nd, you haven't really been paying attention, or you're not active enough in the market to understand. Now, both political parties are trying to get elected. So guess what happens when that's happening? Interest rates start to dive. You know, if you're old like me, you've watched this happen for generations, and it's unfortunate that we're the victims or it's our advantage. But what I would tell you is it's making the light shine really bright on 2024. 2023 did not finish as poorly as it should have. Units, we were down almost 20% in units last year over my previous year. However, at the same time, our volume really didn't change because our average sales price, and I'm just talking about from a residential standpoint, and I'll talk about investor stuff in a sec, but our average price went from $562,500 the year previous to last year. Our average sales price was $1.1 million. So if you start thinking about that, that means the top end of the market was dominating sales, and it truly was. You know, the first home buyer or the second or the third home buyer is impacted by payment very much. You know, the North Hills market, the North Ridge market, the inside the Beltline market, the upper end markets throughout the Triangle are the most robust and the healthiest they've ever been, because we didn't really have an upper end market until about 10 years ago. And really not until 6 or 7 years ago, because we were not a metropolitan market yet. We were a small town in some ways competing with a lot of large places. Well, not anymore. If you're starting a new business, Raleigh's the #1 place people are thinking about doing it at. And so if that's what their view is or their vision is, those folks who are the CEOs, CFOs, the top dogs with whoever the company is, they got to move here. Well, if we don't have housing for them, what do they got to do? They got to start tearing down stuff to build it because they want to have it in a close proximity to where they're living. That's why you're seeing North Hills go crazy right now. You're going to see Cary do the same thing as these campuses come online with Apple, etc. You're going to see that area around Fenton just go absolutely nuts. Whether or not the gaming industry continues to work like it is over there won't really matter. The old Cary Town Center site, if something great happens there, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. Cary's invested so heavily, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Cary, where the old South Hills Mall is right now, Cary is allowing the highest rise buildings to go there that have ever been built in Cary. And they're going to be doing and I don't know what the exact terminology is for this kind of gaming, but you know, all these kids that are playing all these games that are going to major universities, there's a degree in this at every single university in the country right now. The epicenter of that's going to be built in Cary at South Hills Mall. They're spending $165 million to build the building. They're gifting that to our development team who's developing this little project. And you know, we're fortunate and blessed to be a part of it, but it's going to be really cool. But Town of Cary wants to make them where they're the Super Bowl of that type of sport. So that e-sport is going to dominate a lot of what happens on that side of town. But you're going to see Cary literally explode, because Cary really, other than Preston, hasn't had that upper end yet. So you're going to start seeing a lot of the residential teardowns similar to what you're seeing. And you're having it a little bit right now, like off of Academy Street, you know, kind of near where Bond's Brewery is. You're seeing a little bit of that happen, but you're going to see an explosion of it happen coming forward. That's one of those places. But, you know, to finish off what happened last year, I think if you were new to real estate investing and you hadn't really done it past the last 6 years, you got scared. It's the first time in your life it wasn't so easy that there was no way to get out, right? But all I'm gonna tell you, it was only a 5-6 month, not even that, 4.5 month little blip on the calendar. But everybody who's not used to investing, and the fact it's not that easy all the time, got scared, panicked, pulled out, lending stopped. You know, people that start getting in panic zone, oh, I don't want to loan this, I don't want to loan that, unless it's somebody like me. Now, I got the opposite extreme. I got everybody in the world calling me trying to loan me money. I don't want to borrow anymore. You know, I got all the realm I want, but they're all after people because they want to make sure that person actually not only has a business, but a business model that's repeatable and it's got time behind it. So newer investors are going to struggle more to get capital unless they've got personal relationships with lenders, because that's one thing I'm going to tell you, and I'm not up here, they're not paying me to say this, this is the truth. Personal relationships with lenders are the number one thing I would be out there seeking right now as a result of what happened in 2023. But I wouldn't really be worried, because I'm going to tell you, in 2024, everybody that pulled back is going to jump back in head first and more, because what's coming, our market for 2024, especially the Triangle, is going to be the brightest one you've ever seen. This will probably be the record year in real estate in the Triangle, but we got a problem. Everybody's been talking about all this inventory that's hit the market, right? All I keep hearing, there's all this staggered in. Oh crap, I don't know where they're at. Did you realize that last January 1st, in the Triangle, just talking about Triangle, not our broader market, because our broader market now covers almost 20 counties. But if you're just looking at the core Triangle, last year, coming in January 1, there were 5,800 homes on the market for sale. This year, there are only 5,100 homes on the market for sale, and 8.75% reduction in inventory. What does that mean prices do? When inventory decreases, prices go up. Scarcity creates demand. It makes numbers go up. That's the opposite of what you're hearing all over the world, but it's going to happen here. I can tell you, I sold in 2023, which was supposed to be this horrible market. I sold more houses over $2 million last year than I have combined in my entire real estate career put together. Last year, over $1.5 million, just new construction, 560 sold just in the little Raleigh sub-market. I sold 40% of those. So I'm like, shit, this is the greatest market ever. Like, right? You know, I'm glad the competition's decided they don't want to work anymore, and they're scared. And they're going to stay home in bed because somebody, you know, somewhere else said the market's not great here. It's as good as you're ever going to see it. You know, the great thing about being my age and having this be my 4th decade in real estate is that I've weathered 4 of these really bad financial crises that they talk about. This little thing we faced last year wasn't, if that was a financial crisis, I've got kids that are 20 years older than that. I mean, that was nothing, and we shouldn't be concerned, but as newbies to investing, we get panicked, right? You know, if you've been doing it 5 years or less, you don't know that there can be a hiccup in the market. And that, you know, we'll talk about that a little deeper here in a little bit, but I would just tell you that what you hear about the bright 2024, you better be doing stuff about it right this moment, because it is going to be that bright. Our biggest problem and our biggest challenge is going to be not having enough inventory. You know, what that's going to create, what it's going to make it happen other places, is you're going to see it expand. You're going to see Nash County be a place people really want to live. You're going to see Wilson County be on absolute frigging fire. You know, if you don't know what's happening in downtown Wilson right now, the nicest baseball complex that's ever been built in the Triangle's getting ready to be built. They're going to start playing in 2026 there, by the way. If you don't know that, we're part of that as well, and it's going to be cool. And the money's backing it. The Milwaukee Brewers are behind the whole project. And they're, you know, the new Major League Baseball contract means that if you play AAA baseball, they have to provide housing for you that's similar to what a Major League Baseball player can have. So right now, downtown Wilson doesn't have luxury housing. Guess what? It's coming. We're putting it on the ground right now, and we got to get it ready by 2026 when these guys are here ready to play. You know, that AAA market, if you're not familiar with it, that's a market that's going, they play part of their year up in the majors, they come back down, they go back up, they come back down. Well, those guys, rather than giving them the money that they're looking for, the lifestyle is what the major leagues can provide for them without it being the same economic impact. So the owners of the Brewers, in one little development we're doing down there, are buying 12 of the units from us in this new luxury townhome community we're going to do in the middle of downtown Wilson at a number nothing's ever sold for in Wilson ever. So there'll be a launching pad to go into it. If you're looking throughout the Triangle, though, like Sanford's getting ready to go ballistic bonkers, because everything going down that way from an industry standpoint doesn't have anywhere to live. You know, I've got my first 3 projects coming off the ground down there right now, but you know, it's hard when people are looking out there, because some of it, real estate investing, is betting on the come. We're betting, there's nothing to say that Sanford would have been a great place to invest for the last 80 years, because it wasn't. But because of what is coming and how we're changing the economic forecast of that area, you know, right now the university system in the Triangle and broader university system is developing new degrees and new programs to feed the companies that are coming. You know, so those degrees, the first people graduating won't be for 5 more years, but guess what? They are 100% coming. Do you think that they would be that invested, the state would be that invested? Not possible. So just know that's happening. But it's going to be a broad thing. I mean, we are involved in a lot of what's going on and knowing what's getting ready to happen sometimes. So I would tell you, people are going to start looking at the Triangle being everything just past Burlington, almost to Greensboro, coming back to the Triangle, going the other direction from Wilson, rounding in, going back, even touching parts of Rocky Mount. Now, what makes Rocky Mount and Wilson different? And I hope nobody, is anybody in here work in Rocky Mount or on any of the, because I may not say what I'm getting ready to say if it's true, but do y'all remember years ago when we had a bunch of flooding happen, you know, from different major storms? That's why you found out why maybe Rocky Mount is not as good a place. There's an awful lot of Rocky Mount that is in floodplain area, and it's closer to the coast, obviously, than Wilson even, but it's a much lower lying land. So if you start looking, one of the things, and I'm not saying don't go to Rocky Mount, because there will be things that work there. I think it's going to be, though, more of the lower end housing that works there. But the stuff that you do there, please be careful of floodplains. Please look at 100-year flood has happened inside the last 100 years there, and there are projections that it's going to happen again. So just be careful when you invest in areas like that. But I just, and I apologize, I'm expanding too much on the question, but it's hard to talk about what do you see coming in 2024 without getting really jacked up excited.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much, and no need to apologize for expanding. I think that was all really great stuff. I think you got into my next question, which was going to be about kind of looking forward at 2024, and I think you did a pretty good job of touching on a lot of that stuff. I know it does seem to be a lot of optimism in the market, and I think on a national scale, right? A lot of people excited about rates coming down, what that could do to the markets on a national level. I know you got pretty granular on the triangle, which was what we wanted to do here. Any other drivers that you see? I mean, obviously rates, the scarcity of supply, right, is a challenge. I know we talked at the last event about some of the challenges with permitting and some of the things that create roadblocks for folks in this room to put up housing. Are there any other things like that you can see that might be adding to the tailwinds? And if not, that's okay, but wanted to make sure we asked that too.
Those things aren't going to stop. The municipalities, y'all are voting people in office that don't understand that we need to grow. Stop voting people in office that don't understand growth is necessary. I don't like that my tax value goes up, but guess what? My net worth goes up at the same time. So I'm okay with it. But everybody should be okay with it. Our goal in life, I think, is to go forward and get better as we progress. But we've got to make sure that we're interviewing these people that are running for office to find out, what do they know about business? What do they understand the economic factors that make an area great or can improve a region? It's great to say we're a target for people to come to, but if we don't provide the platform for them to do it, and yeah, that means we give big industry some tax benefits to come here so that we can get jobs, so that we can live where we live instead of having to move somewhere else to get those jobs. A lot of people, I hate that those big industries, they don't have to pay the same tax I do. Yeah, they do. The people who own it pay their personal tax, but they're burdened again that they pay their corporate tax when they're creating something for you, a place to work, a place for you to invest, a place for there to be better scale out there. I think we're in a unique position because a lot of people who run for office have no background to run for office. And a lot of really successful business people never run for office. You know why? Because people talk about the fact that they've been successful, and that's a bad thing. You shouldn't be successful. Be horrible at what you do and then run for office, and people will love you. That's not a good compromise. So one of the problems when you have elected officials that really don't understand and they start putting, all these other factors, like right now, I've got a development, believe it or not, and I'm not telling you I don't care about different types of vegetation, I do, but there's a rare plant, don't know what it is, there's not one on the site I'm developing, but we had to shut down our site for 8 months because somebody told them they saw a piece of grass in our development that could potentially be this little plant that they wanted to see grow. So we shut down. Instead of a botanist coming out there and inspecting it one weekend, which the guy, when he finally got there, 6 months after they delayed our project, looked at it and said, no, that's a weed. Doesn't have anything to do with what we're stopping it for. But we got shut down for 6 months after it had already taken 3.5 years to get approved for the site. When we finally start digging and going forward and think we see a horizon that maybe in 12 months we're going to have something in the ground, boom, a crazy plant that, by the way, is only indigenous in Florida, Arizona, and 2 other really warm weather states. Why they thought it was here, I don't know, but just like the alligator they might have been protecting in our creek, same thing. That kind of thing is always going to be out there. There's no way to avoid it. Those are things you need to be prepared for. But interest rates, if you don't believe that rates are coming down, it doesn't matter what inflation does. Do you even hear them talking about inflation anymore? You know why they stopped talking about it? They realize that the folks in power right now can't get reelected if they're talking about inflation instead of interest rates, which are determine whether people buy homes or don't buy homes. And real estate is the only thing that drives the economy, period. Go look. You talk to any lender. The ones who try to make money on credit cards will tell you, not possible. People don't buy enough. They when the market gets bad, they start trying to sell more tractors. They aren't going to buy but so many tractors, they last too long. Unless they start making tractors stop working after 2 years, they're not going to loan money to that, and it's not enough of a turn. Real estate is where money is made, and it's caused by scarcity, period. And we need our elected officials to get out of the way of progress. Because progress is going to happen whether you want it to or not. It just might be delayed. It might be the next group that gets in power or the next one. But once you move somewhere, you don't get to say, I'm the only person that lives here. Nobody else gets to come. And look, the house next door to my house got torn down last year. I was glad because I was involved in it, but I hated it when it was happening because I had to listen to the noise every morning and every night. But guess what? It also doubled the value of the house I owned next door by me doing nothing other than allowing that to happen next door to me. That wasn't a bad thing. And I think our goals should be along those lines. But I don't really think there's anything out there that's new that's going to stop us, but I do believe we still have the same problems. And it is all about getting informed enough to understand when a person running for office tells you they're going to be for a certain thing, you got to look at what their record was for the last 30 years of whatever they did in their life somewhere else, not think, oh, well, they've changed. People don't change. They're going to go back to doing things the way they did before, especially if it's someone who's been elected previously. Look at what happened while they were in office the last time and see if that's what you want economically to happen. I'm not talking about social economic or any of the other, I'm talking about economics, period. Because money drives the world whether we want it to or not. Until money goes away, it drives the world.
That's great, and I think that's the municipal challenges. A lot of the red tape is a problem on a national scale, right? And it sounds like that's not going away here in the Triangle anytime soon. But let's dig in a little bit. I wonder, we got a lot of folks in the room who are out there transacting and building a business, right? And at different points on their journey. But I wonder, from your perspective, you've been doing this a long time here, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see investors making today, and especially looking forward at the environment for 24 that maybe some folks in the room could benefit from?
Okay, this is going to sound unpopular, and your parents told you the opposite of this when you were little kids. The worst thing I did, and biggest mistake I've made in my career, I was waiting to invest until I had enough money saved to pay cash for whatever I was trying to do. So I was off scrounging up, trying to raise all this cash so that when I did my first project, I could go do it. Well, let me give you a real quick economic lesson. And I won't even look at a project that doesn't make 20%. 40% is what I'm aiming at, which means I'm going to end up on average somewhere between 28.5 and 31 is where I try to stay. But I don't look at, if somebody brings me something and it doesn't yield or the potential isn't there to make at least 20%, I don't even want to talk about it. But that's not the real exchange. Here's the real exchange. If I do it in cash, and let's say whatever I'm looking at, I'm doing in cash, and it's, let's say it's only a $100,000 project I'm going to do. And I'm trying to gain this 20% margin, right? That's what I want that project to make. That means it's going to pull back in. 120, right? So it's 20K is what I'm working with. Well, if I do that in cash, any of you rocket science, how stupid is that? What if instead I put $1 down on what I'm doing, right? And it makes $20,000. That's a 20,000% return. My money, like your money, should be employed. If you're not aware of this, the biggest mistake I see real estate investors making is having too much cash into projects. You know, yes, your bankers want you to have more. Why do they want you to have more in there? To limit their risk. Whoever that lending arm is wants to limit their risk. But does your money work the same job? If I have money out there employed, and all my money's always employed, my money sitting in a bank right now for the first time in a while can make about 5.2%. I just told you I won't even look at anything that makes less than 20%. So why would I want my money sitting in banks instead of invested in deals? And if I only have $100,000 to invest, and I invest it all in one project, and that one project's gonna make 20%, I'm gonna make, with my 100, $20,000, right? If I instead did 5 projects with that same $100,000, and they all pulled back in 20, I would make $100,000, not $20,000, right? So your money, like you when you were a kid, should be employed. And when it gets employed, the goal, like with you, with your job, is to make the most money you can possibly make. Well, my money is employed. And return on my money, the quicker it gets back to me, the better I like it. You know, when the bad guys take 5 years to get back, when they come back, I'm happy they came back, but I'm gonna have a talk with that money and say, hey, look, that wasn't good. Next time you go out, come back quicker, because I am still globally, instead of looking at it on an annual basis and figuring my target out that way, we all have to have a goal of how we do things, right? So for me, when last year, everything I invested in, and this is gonna, like some of you, when I just said what my goals were, when I tell you what really happened in real life, you're gonna think, how in the hell could that happen in 2023? My return to my investors and myself last year was 110% average. That was our average. So whatever I invested in, that was my average return capital-wise. And part of that took place if you sit down and think about it. So I told you before, most of the lenders I do business with will loan me anywhere from 80% of a project to 90% because of my credit looks good and I got a good balance sheet and I've got assets to back it up. Okay, if that's the case, and I'm trying to make, on average, when I do things, I'm targeting 40%, right? That's my target. We averaged last year on all our projects 31%. But that's not what the return on capital was. That's just what the project made percentage-wise. But return on capital, because for me personally, I only put 20% down on the average investment that I made. And if they were returning 31%, believe it or not, our average across the board, we didn't have one project that didn't make money. The lowest amount of money we made last year on any transaction was 34.5% return on cash. Okay, so why would I ever put a dime in a bank if I could avoid putting a dime in a bank? And a lot of people would have told you last year was the bad year to do it, but I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest hurdle and the biggest mistake I made. My first project I invested in, I did it 100% in cash, and you know, thought that was going to be all the capital I was going to need, which anybody do a project and whatever you project is all the capital you need. Raise your hand, because I want to do business with you. I miss every time. So I put a margin of error in, for me, of 10%. Even though banks only want me to put 5, I put 10, because I know I'm not as smart as I need to be and I'm going to make mistakes. So being off a little bit won't kill me if my projections were I'm going to make 10% of mistakes as I go about this. But if you do that and you got all cash invested, now I got to come up with, I put my life savings, I waited 20 years to invest in something. Now I'm going to use it all. Now I need 10% more. Where's that coming from? That's how investors get in trouble. My earliest investments, that's how I got in trouble. When I did my very first ones, I did them in cash. The return was going to be 20%, so I was like, oh man, this is so awesome. But it ended up taking 3 times longer than I thought it was going to take, because when I needed that extra 10% of cash, I didn't have it, so I had to make enough to save it to go finish that project. I don't think that's different right now. I think there are so many people that tell me, yeah, I'm going to start investing next year. Once I save enough money, then I'm going to really do it. Well, guess what's going to happen while you're waiting? The value of what you're trying to invest in is going to keep getting further away from you. So if you're trying to save the cash to get there, it's going to get further and further away. But what I've recognized, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'll admit it at the same time. I'm invested just in single family builds right now. I've got about 380 in the triangle I'm building right now. When one comes off, another one goes on. One comes off, another one, I'm like trying to keep up and keep it going. When people say, oh, what's your net worth? I don't care what it is. When I quit, that's when you'll know, because I'm going to keep all that cash out there employed until one of these days. And I think that's a problem too. I think as a neophyte investor, I used to be like getting my banker to help me figure out what am I worth? How cool am I? I got all this cool money. How much do I have? I can't wait. Now what I do instead, I employ people not to tell me. I've got an accountant that I don't want to know. Now, we're unfortunately going through some estate planning right now with my kids and my wife, and they're making me sit in a room to hear shit I don't want to hear. I have, whether it's good or bad, I don't want to know. I really don't, because that's the paralysis that happens with an investor. When you hear you're worth all this, now you're scared to do anything because you don't want to lose any of it. And if they tell you you're worth only this, oh shit, I'm horrible, I'm this or I'm that. Either one, it doesn't matter whether you're on top or on bottom, both of them scare the crap out of you and you don't want to do anything else. That's wrong. When you invest, investment should be that. It's an investment. Risk comes with investment. I can tell you, after 40 years of doing this, I maybe have done 2 or 3 things in 40 years that didn't make money. I've never lost money in a transaction, ever. In 40 years of doing it. Why? Took time to make sure on the front end I was investing better. I think the biggest mistake I made early in my career is letting people, first I took too long to start. Then once I started, everything that came available, I got to have that. If I don't get that one, oh man, life's going to end. No, that's not true. If there's something you think is so good a deal that you can't live without it, it's going to fail. That's the one, and it's going to fail whether it fails a ton or a little. Because if you thought one was going to make 400% when you started it, and it made 350, it's not like investors are going to be, oh shit, I made 350. No, I didn't do a good job. It should have made 400. I only made 350% on that one. And if you don't believe that, start talking to some of the builders out there that had already spent the 400% return they thought they were going to make when it was coming in. And when it came in at 350, they're like upside down 50% because they're spending on the come. So.
No, that's great. All of that is good, and I'm glad I shared the questions we were going to ask, and I know you've gotten into a couple of them. What are some of the big mistakes you've made? And I think that's got to be really helpful for folks in the room. I wonder.
Believe it or not, I didn't read it.
Well, then you are really in great shape.
I'm a nut.
You're right in front of me, which is awesome. So one of the things I thought would be interesting to talk about is, when you look back on your career, right, and you've participated in the real estate space on multiple levels, right? But when you look back at your career, do you see any moments that, you've identified as, man, that was a pivotal moment that kind of helped either propel you onto the path that you're on or kept you on it? Are there any things that come to mind and that were like a big catalyst, right? And I'm sure folks here, like as you're going through your career, you may recognize some of this stuff, but I'd love to hear, what you think.
I think sometimes the best way we learn is when we're getting hurt or when something good's not happening. And even though I would love to say I figured some of these things out early, but not all of them. And, how about if I tell you this? I'm going to go back to a mistake one time. You want to hear the biggest mistake ever? And I'm embarrassed to even admit this one. When Preston Development, before it started, if y'all aren't aware of this, before Jim Goodnight was invested in it, there was a group from Dallas, Texas that started that project that had a major sexual discrimination case against them that shut down the whole project, and they went broke, belly up, and the guy who was here locally doing it failed completely. Well, 55, which isn't too far from there on the backside of Cary, was like out in the middle of nowhere at the time, and we're talking about in the late 80s. It was like the Wild West, way, nobody even thought about ever going off at 55. And now, if you go on 55 in Cary, there's grocery stores, shopping. There isn't any space left. I went to this small pig farmer's house back in those days, and the guys I thought were the smartest people on the planet, when I brought this 2,000 acres back, that they were going to sell for $500 an acre, believe it or not. $500 an acre he was willing to take. Just thrilled. All he was like, if I just could get $1 million, that's all I'd ever need for anything. And because Preston had just failed down the road and Goodnight hadn't stepped in yet to take it over to make it go miraculous, my big investors, who, by the way, and I won't say their name in here, but developed almost all of North Raleigh. I mean, if they didn't develop it, 2 of their friends developed it. I can tell you, anything north of Crabtree Valley Mall, they developed, or this group developed. I brought this big piece back, young kid, thinking, man, I've got it. Here's the one, and I'm going to put whatever dollar I got invested in this one. And they laughed at me in the room and told me what a fool I was, that nothing would ever happen in Cary, and especially not in that area because there was no sewer available yet. There's sure a whole lot of it over there now. But I just tell you, unfortunately, along your path, there are going to be people that you've got this, you're seeing things, and they're going to tell you that your vision is wrong and what you're thinking is wrong. Now, in my early 20s, when people told me that, I knew they were smarter than me, and I believed them and said, shit, I won't do this. Now, what if I'd have done some of those things? I didn't, because surely they knew better than me. Let me tell you what's different. Now, I'm their age. Those guys who I was talking about, giving me the advice back then, and by the way, some of them were economics professors at NC State, by the way, at the time. One of them might have had a name that started with a G that took over that Preston group later on. But anyway, when things like that happened and when people were talking back then, that was fearful. What's different now, and it is different, there is a whole lot more. I'm sitting in here, nobody's paying me to sit in here, and I made my money myself. So if I can reach down and help somebody else up, instead of the guys that were there putting a lid on the cap and saying, hey, no more entry, guys. Got all the people we need. I don't want anybody else out there doing what I do. Because that's still the mentality of a lot of people who've gotten up here. I'm going to tell you, that's not my mentality, and it's not the mentality of the majority of the folks I know who I do business with anyway, because since we're self-made, why wouldn't we want somebody else to be self-made? What do we want to do? Get up here on the mountain and, you're going to high five yourself? I mean, that ain't cool. I want to get up on the mountain and high five everybody I friggin' know. I'm begging the people who work on my team to invest in the things I do. The ones who have all made money doing it. I haven't had one transaction that they didn't make money in. But do you think if they gave me their only $5,000, I'm going to let them lose even if the damn deal loses? No, I'm going to put mine right beside it, and at least they're going to break even. Because, that's just not, they're not in a position, their 5 means more than 50 million means to me. I'm not going to hurt that other person. I think there's too much selfishness in the world, and I personally believe y'all can all change that by teaming up and partnering and helping each other as you're doing projects. It's much easier. I've never done a project that I did by myself that I enjoyed as much as ones I got a partner on. Every one I got a partner on, we can knuck it up and it's cool. You're doing it by yourself, you go in to tell somebody about how great it just did, and they're like, oh, that guy's bragging about how much he's done or how good this is. And unfortunately, we are like that. I mean, who wants to hear the story of the guy who's got $1 billion who's whining because he doesn't have $1 billion and one? Nobody does. But I can tell you that that's all about because we don't have an expanded minds, because we aren't listening. This is going to be unpopular, and I apologize for what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. God's in control of everything that happens in everybody in here's life. And God gets to pick and choose where the wealth or the money goes. And do you think he's going to put it in somebody's hands that isn't going to help somebody else? Maybe for a minute to use them to prove that it won't work. But he's going to be a whole lot more excited, at least the God I believe in. It's going to be a whole lot more excited. It's the only one there is, too, by the way. He's going to be a whole lot more excited if we realize it's his. What we do here, listen, I'm 62. I got a death sentence somewhere out here in front of me on this earth. Now, I'm going to go straight to heaven when that's over with, in my mind, because I believe. But in the interim, whatever I collect between now and when I get laid up in a casket, I'm not going to spend it. I don't need it. I'm having fun living life at this level. Why? Is having something cooler? No, it doesn't. But being able to know that you could is kind of cool. You just don't want to go do that. But when you lay down, I'm going to promise you, when you lay in your casket, they're not going to pile it up with cash. You can say in your will you want them to, but somebody's going to dig you up and steal it if you do. That's not a good plan.
I love that, and I think you talk a lot about what I think of as the abundance mentality versus a scarcity mentality, right? The people that came before you operated with much more of a scarcity mentality, and we're protecting what's something in their minds. But I think I love you talking about that, and you mentioned it at the last one of these too, that wanting to help people up, and I think that's the power of rooms like this, because we can all come together and help one another. That's real power, and that leads kind of into my next question.
Well, let me.
Oh,
that doesn't mean I want to come do the work for you. Okay, because that's the opposite. Everybody, I spoke at this thing in Dallas, and literally we had to have a Zoom call afterward because there was like 6,500 people that wanted to be on this Zoom and I figured it out and told them how to look at deals. I mean, I really had time with them, and I really taught them how to ferret out deals. Well, they all brought me stuff nobody had ever even looked at and wanted me to figure it out for them and then go do it in whatever state they were in, whatever city. I don't know the rules in every other city. I know where I play. I can, that's another thing I'm going to advise y'all on. Don't go do shit where you can't get to it yourself. If you are investing somewhere that you know nothing about, it can sound like the best deal on the planet, but you don't know anything about it. And if you don't have a partner in that market that knows it all, and by the way, really make sure they do, because everybody can talk. It doesn't mean they know. That's a bad deal too.
That's fantastic, because I completely subscribe to that. I know at Renovo we are hyper focused on making loans where we know the real estate, and we do that. We know the real estate because we have somebody that lives in that city and eats and breathes it every day, and I think that's fantastic advice. As you think, again, back to the community thing, the life of a real estate investor, I think, can sometimes feel like a pretty lonely ride. You're out there, and in many cases, it all kind of starts and ends with you, especially when you're getting going. And I know having partners is really helpful with that. But for the folks in the audience who might feel like they're on an island at times, on your journey, did you have any mentors or key relationships that really played a significant role kind of in your development? And I'm curious how you thought about kind of engaging with and navigating with the broader real estate community around you, right? Whether that's other investors to partner with, folks in various disciplines, lenders, attorneys. There's a whole community of folks, right, that are all kind of, attacking this thing from different angles. And I wonder how you kind of thought about that in your career.
Well, the first thing I want to tell you is loyalty is valued everywhere. And I have been extremely loyal to anybody I've ever done anything with from the very beginning, until that person on the other end taps out or says it's not time to, I'm at a different stage of my life, I'm not ready to go do this anymore. When I started, and I don't want to sound, and I am old as shit, but I don't want to sound like, unrelatable to what times are now, but it is that much different, because this old school, old boy network that existed way back here, there were only 3 or 4 players. It wasn't like there was, everybody actually had a chance to participate. Now, right now, a lot of people who look at me think Jim's the only one participating right now. I'm glad they think that, because when they hear my name on the other side of a deal, they run or get scared, or they pay too much. And it doesn't bother me, as much as I care about other folks, it does not bother me that somebody else pays too much for something. It doesn't, because it's going to come back down to where it should. And that person who paid too much isn't going to be somebody I'm competing with the next time we get ready to go do something again. But, my earliest mentors, there's a guy named Lewis Dickerson that started Homes by Dickerson, that really, when he built the houses for Homes by Dickerson, I got to sit in a room and listen to him. There was a guy named Tom Powell that they said was the tightest human being that's ever lived. He'd never let anybody look at the other side of a penny. But he was a father figure in some ways to me in my early life, but he didn't give me anything. I think that's the mistake sometimes, is somebody asks you for help and then you give everything to them and they don't learn anything from it. You do it for them and it doesn't help them. If you don't fail forward, which that's what I think all investors do, is fail forward, you don't really learn anything. And that's why I think the people who started investing in the last 6 years are going to struggle more in the current market and in the future market, because we're coming into a real market. Even though it's going to be great, it's still real. We had 6 years here where it wasn't real. It was fantasy land investing. We're not going to see that anymore, because if you didn't pay attention when your tax bills just came out, Raleigh just caught up to what happened the last 6 years. So there you go, we're back on track. But Arthur Sandman was the most brilliant person that I've ever met in my life. I'm friends and partners and do a lot with his sons, Michael, Andy, and Barry, still to this day. But when I was a young kid, getting to listen to him talk about what he was going to do to invest, or things he was going to do. He was an economics professor at State also, that had a economics degree, a law degree, and an accounting degree. And a doctorate in each one. So he's a pretty smart guy. So an idiot like me that can't use the big SAT words and all those other things, getting to be exposed in their room, even not getting to be able to put food on the plate, but just to listen, is an amazing thing. And I would tell you, as a neophyte investor, every time you're around somebody that's willing to share experience, don't talk over them. Don't, like, nobody, I can talk a lot now. Back then, I was silent. When I got to sit in a room and Arthur and Lewis spoke to each other, and Tom Coffey, who was another engineer who's off building the world's biggest sandcastles right now because he already made his fortune, and retired in 1989, before those other guys did a lot more of what they've done, but still retired in 89 with a net worth of about 500 million, which today, who knows what that would have been, and has got 21 different tulip varieties named after him because that became his next hobby. And now he's a sandcastle builder all over the world. To sit in a room with those three guys when they talk to each other was like unbelievable. And then, one of my current business partners introduced me to a word that is important for every investor to have, and it's called financial courage. If you don't have, and people are going to lose their financial courage along an investment trail. If you are partnered up with somebody and you start fearing their financial courage, the thing you're invested in is going to stop not doing well. You're gonna be, oh shit, the person I'm partnered with has already made all theirs. Their financial courage is gone, because financial courage disappears for two reasons. One, because you go broke, and two, because you make too much money you're trying to protect. It's one or the other. That's why I advise you to not worry about where you sit in the moment. Instead, worry about the game when you're finished. If you're counting your chips right in the middle of the game, you're going to lose every one of those chips because they become too valuable to you.
I think that's fantastic. Would it be safe to say that your career would probably have turned out a lot different had you not had those relationships and invested that time listening to those folks?
I wouldn't have ever had the courage, but I really didn't even have the courage because I was trying to save the money. Like trying to save the money was the dumbest thing I ever did. And not listening and employing what I was hearing every day these guys were doing while I was young enough to do it. Instead, I waited until I started doing it in '96, but I really got serious in the worst year supposedly on the planet. Anybody know what year that is? 08. That's when I really got going because everybody else quit. Well, I had 200 plus builders reliant on me to provide lots for them. And all the people that had been doing business with me for the whole part of my career stopped providing lots. They just said, oh, we've made all our money, we're done. We're just going to sit on what we own. One of these days we'll sell off the land. And I didn't have that option because I hadn't created enough wealth. I mean, I would hate to look. I started in real estate in '83. If you looked at what I looked like financially from '83 to 2008, other people would have thought it was good. But if you look from 2008 to 2023, people would say, holy shit, because the difference is that extreme, and it was a lot shorter period of time. But the need was there because lenders all shut down. Nobody would do anything. I had to go, in order for builders to be able to borrow money to build houses, I had to go put the money I've been saving my whole life in banks so that banks would loan that money out to them. And at the time, believe it or not, every dollar I put in, they'd loan out 10. It's changed now, it's a little less, but in '08, they still would loan out. If I put in 500 grand, they'd loan 5 million if I took that risk, because that 500 grand supported the debt on that for a long time. And I had to put it at risk so that they figured it out that way. But have you ever tried helping somebody that's already made it in their life, like a builder you would try to support, and they're like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. I've already made all my money. I'm done. I don't need to do it anymore. Well, instead, what I had to do is put money in banks, tell the banker to call them, and not tell them it was my money backing them up. because if I hadn't done that, a lot of the best builders in Raleigh would have retired. Now, I was sitting in a meeting at the time, and this bank's no longer in business, so I can talk about it. Capital Bank's the name of it. And the gentleman who was the president of that bank pulled in who he thought at the time were and I don't know how I got in this room, but they brought in the 10 people they thought knew more about real estate than anybody else in the Triangle, and I just happened to be one of those people. And interest rates, by the way, at the time were about 3%. And so the first genius to my right said, well, let's lower interest rates some more. Well, obviously you couldn't keep going down because the Fed wasn't making any money. They were loaning money out at zero. They'd have to start going at negative to be able to do that, which was never going to happen in time. Now, rates did dip slightly lower, but having a 2 3/4 rate versus a 3 wouldn't have made somebody jump in or not jump in. It just didn't make sense. So one of the programs we came up with, and it's one we are about to re-employ again right now on a small scale, was a program where if you had a $500,000 house and I had $1 million house for sale, if you would pay me full price for mine, I would buy yours at whatever market value was less 6% because I had to pay a commission to sell it to someone else. And I leveraged down each time, so it made sense. So friends of mine who at the time, one of my builders had 19 of those finished houses, and this is in 08 when there weren't a lot of $1 million houses. One guy in town had 19 and they were all priced over $1 million. And he had given all of his cash back to banks. There was a predatory lender in the Triangle, which I won't mention their name because they partnered with another big bank in the Triangle now. And if I say it, everybody knows who merged. But one particular bank extorted all the money out of every builder that had any money left in chunks over time. So they were flat busted at this point, had put all their money back in and bought the thing down as far as they could. So getting back was just getting back mostly whatever they had invested at this point. And so, you know, we started doing that and it helped a lot of people. You know, when you put everything, and you know, why did I do it? Because since 1983 to 2008, I made all my money off those guys. And instead of being like every other friend I had who turned their back on those guys, I said, well, shit, I wouldn't have any money had they not helped me get here. So I turned around and helped them without them knowing. So for 3 years, until the rest of the world woke up in, you know, the end of 2010, I was pumping every dime I had into banks to help people who didn't know I was helping them. Now, fortunately enough for me, you know, secrets come out over time, and some of those people are still so loyal to me today, it's unbelievable. Some of them, the minute they found out, the next Johnny-come-lately that came along, they went and did business with them instead of being loyal, because some people you help will never be loyal no matter what you do in your life, and you can't create it or make it. But when 08 came and I took the leap of faith, everything blew up. And then a friend of mine who was one of the biggest builders in the Triangle at the time had gotten to an age he didn't want to build any more houses and wanted to start investing and developing. And the same guy that, you know, taught me that word financial courage, when nobody else was playing, we had to start playing. And, you know, they said when the crash happened in 08 that there was a 10-year supply of lots on the ground. Well, if there was, I wonder why we sold through all of them in less than 2 years and didn't have any left to build on and had to start developing again. The reason it felt like it was 10 years is because of how long the municipalities make it to develop something. You know, that is part of the problem. But if you could just start from scratch and go develop something with no rules, you could do it in a year every single time. But unfortunately, it takes 3.5 years to develop a subdivision because of all the BS. But we ran through everything and we got to that point of scarcity again. The market started taking off. We were the first people to hit the ground developing lots and developing big stuff. First big neighborhood I did, big one, I say 900 lot when I did over in Zebulon. Every banker I talked to said, oh my God, why would you do that in Zebulon, North Carolina? Well, let me tell you why I did it. We bought the land for $1.5 million. We got 924 lots approved on that $1.5 million piece of land. Anybody want to do the math real quick? You'll figure out we had very little in the dirt. Nobody still wanted it once we got it approved. So we decided to go develop it. So we go borrow $9 million to develop it. Cost us about 11 to get the first section of lots in the ground. Sold them all at one time, still about $2 million in deficit. But then once I started showing that people would actually buy a house in Zebulon, big national, well, it wasn't a national builder at the time, they've been bought since. Big builder came to me and said, hey, your undeveloped lots. Now, we only got $2 million in the whole project at this point. And by the way, one of my first investors that did something with me, I didn't have any money in it, to be honest with you, because when we bought this land for $1.5 million, once we entitled it, we raised the value of it to $4 million. We sold 25% of it to a friend of ours. You know what much we sold it to him for? $1.5 million. So we had $0 in, and they owned 25% of it. They had to pay a $500,000 penalty because they got in late. Should have only cost $1 million because we were valuing it at $4 million. We go develop the thing, and this, look, this is, if you don't think this is important, it should be. We go develop the thing. Guess how much we got paid on the back end for that piece of property when, after we put the first 100+ lots on the ground for the rest of what's left? $37 million. People paid us for what's left over. We couldn't give it away for $4 million. When I was begging people to buy it, I couldn't give it away until I improved it and made them realize that, you know, people need workforce housing, no matter where it is. Now, our workforce housing, we thought we were going to deliver down here. The average price of it jumped way up here in the interim. Now, it sounds like a great deal, and it is, because it enables us to do other projects after that. But the real truth, had I stayed in, hell, there's $100 million worth of profit I left in the thing for the next people that they're going to make. But you can't, that's one thing you can't also do, cry over spilled milk. If you're looking in your rear view mirror to figure out what you left on the table, you're going to leave so much more in your journey forward because you're going to be stranded back here looking behind you.
That's fantastic. The story about 2008 and you supporting those builders without their, that's a really cool story, and thank you for sharing. I know we're getting a little past time, and I want to be respectful.
I apologize.
I got two quick questions for you, and then, you know, if you have a few minutes, we can take a few questions from the audience.
I don't have anywhere to go, y'all, all night, but I'm good.
All right, so I want to ask these two, and then we'll open it up. So the first one, and you may have touched on this, but maybe not. You know, what's the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you in your business or your real estate career? If you can think back, you know, what's the best piece of advice you think you've ever gotten?
I probably already said it, and it's just literally not to put all your cash into any deal, and to just go do it, get started. That's the advice. I mean, everybody's waiting for the deal. But the other thing is, don't put any of your capital at risk until you figure out most of the problems with the property. If you bring me a piece of dirt today, I may drive over there and see surface rock all over the thing looking like a granite bed and say, I don't think I want to do that one. But what if I'm sitting in my office and I don't go look? Because I've made that mistake too. I have people that I trust, that I've trained to go do this, that swear to God to me that they filmed or gone and looked at this piece of dirt this day and tell me it's almost completely flat. And I go over and the front yard was. But when I tore the house down and realized it's a damn cliff midway through the house going straight downhill, and I've just paid $600,000 to buy this lot inside the Beltline thinking it's flat, and now I got to put a basement there that's going to cost me another $150 on top of what I wanted to spend, makes it more challenging. So what I would tell you is, don't get so big and bad in anything that you don't look at it really and learn to use the tax records in whatever area you're in. The number one thing is understanding IMAPs, understanding how to use the layers. Hey, let me give you one, don't you ever forget to turn on, ever. Because when, everybody know what an overlay district is? Death. Overlay districts can keep you from being able to do whatever you want to do. If you don't light up that tab that says overlay district, now it might be an easy one. It might be like over at NC State where it's just that student parking's not allowed in the street or in the yard, although they do it, but just it might be that simple. Or it might be like two streets, Buckhead and Tanbark. If you look it up in the layers, in Northridge subdivision up here in North Raleigh, those neighbors didn't want anybody to split any more lots on their street, so they put an overlay on themselves. So number one, you couldn't split, but they made their overlay even worse. You can't build a house now over 27 feet high there. Okay, well, 40 feet is the new Raleigh UDO, correct? So 13 feet lower than what the UDO says. Well, here's the dumbest part of the whole thing. There are people that live on that street that live in two-story homes, that their houses are 32 and 33 feet high. If you put an overlay district on yourself, which now, by the way, guess who gets to determine, when it's an overlay versus a restrictive covenants, guess what the municipality can do? They can enforce this self-imposed overlay that you put on yourself. They can now enforce it. The government can. I don't know about you, but every time the government gets in control of something I can or cannot do, they overkill it. So if there's a house on that street ever torn down and the one going back's 29 feet high, they're going to have a problem. They're going to have to cut part of their house off. Trust me. We built one over there and actually had to cut the top of the peak off of a roof and make it a flat roof at the very top because we were 8 inches over. But what it did to everybody else on that street, every other street other than these two streets in Northridge right now has got a $3 million, a $5 million, a $9 million house being built. And these lots are better lots than some of the other ones other people are building on. But what they really forgot about, what happens if their house burns down? If their house burns down, they got two choices. They can either build a house back that's under 27 feet tall or rebuild the exact house that was built in 1967, the same plan with the 8-foot ceilings and the 6'8" doors. They can go back and build that, and it's going to cost 2023 prices to build it. Who's ever going to move in it? Nobody. That's how short-sighted we get. There's a street there's actually everything from Northbrook Drive going back towards North Hills. That whole area, those people thought they were being smart, so they put an overlay on themselves so people couldn't split lots. Okay, so on Shelley Road, which isn't in that area, people are selling their house. That lot was big enough that 2 lots are going back on it. One lot on Shelley Road, there were 2 houses side by side that they put 5 houses back in place of, that, by the way, jumped up to over the median price house, 5 times more expensive than the median house in the area. So it didn't injure anybody economically. But if you go on the other side of Northbrook where you can't do that now the only thing people can do when people come to me and say, oh, I want to sell my lot for $1 million. Unfortunately, that means I've got to be able to start at a $4 million when I build the house back, and nobody's building a $4 million house on your street. So you'll have to wait until, because numbers will get there, but it's going to be a while. So overlay districts, big time bad. Make sure you understand how to use the tax maps, because that's the gold that there is out there. I can sit in my office, flip on the tax records, and tell you yes or no to 99.9% of things. Another one that everybody needs is Google Earth Pro. Okay, because I can drop on the street and walk up and down. Now I can only see the front yard, unfortunately, or I might be able to look from up here, but sometimes it's hard to figure it out. Try to drop yourself in the backyard and you'll realize it doesn't work yet. But those are two tools everybody needs.
You hit on that theme a couple of times, and just want to restate, but like just doing the work, right? And especially when you're looking to partner with somebody, don't bring a half-baked project, right? Do the work, make sure you know what you're doing. I actually had a Lyft driver yesterday that wants to get into real estate, and that's, he's a builder and all this stuff, but it's like, man, you gotta do the work. You can't get there if you're not willing to do it yourself. And I think that's fantastic advice. Let's open it up for some questions here.
Yes, sir.
What's the website in order to the tax maps?
Wake County, wakegov.com is if you're doing something in Wake County, wakegov.com. Pull up whatever property address you want, and then at the top right-hand corner, there's your iMaps. You click on it, and it'll go to that property address. And then in the top right-hand corner of that, there are layers. There are little sheets of paper laying there, and there are different layers, and they can dig as deep as you want to go. They'll tell you whether it's got sewer there. Oh, I will tell you right now, you want to avoid a mistake. Here's a big one. Okay, when you turn on City of Raleigh sewer for a project, and it's a corner lot, and you see the sewer, and you're going to split this lot, and you see the sewer right up here in front of that lot. If you don't look at the topo and realize when you split the lot, because you're going to turn it this way, when you split it, this house on the left sewers perfectly into this. A lot of corners in Raleigh don't have sewer on the other corner. It might be 4 houses down before it reconnects to sewer again. And guess what? When you've already, and do you think the City of Raleigh comes and says, hey, no, you can't split that lot? No, they approve it because you can split it. But now you're to the point of doing construction drawings on this thing and you realize, oh shit, I can't sewer it. What do I do? Well, simple. You run the sewer from this corner right here, 4 houses down to here, and about $200,000 later, you got sewer to this house that now your lot just went up in value $200,000, and it might not be able to accept that. So that's how important those layers are.
Great question. Anybody else?
So going back to a time where cash didn't necessarily chase you when it comes to like you having a deal available and ready for investors to come in and invest their money in. What did you do what was your approach when going to seek cash, seek investors to try and fund your deals?
So mine won't work for you. Today, what would work for you is to find people like me, do the work ahead of time. Like, I don't go looking for deals anymore. People bring them to me. And they bring them because when they bring them, I'm fair with the person. I say, hey, you're getting, greed will keep you from doing it because you bring it to me and now you got to split it with me. You ain't got any money. I'm the one putting all the money at risk, and I'm going to give you 50% of the profit, and you think I'm giving you a bad deal. And unfortunately, these guys, when they, oh no, I had more in mind that I was going to keep 70 and give you 30. So I'm going to put up 100% of the cash for your idea, and you think the economic picture should be 70-30. It really should be 70-30 my way versus yours, but I don't do that to people. When I partner with them, I want us equally weighted, even if I got to put the weight on your side in.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on that because, like, as a lender, we see that a lot, right? Our business is very focused on, we don't work with a ton of like brand new investors. There are lenders out there who will do that, but we like to see a track record, right, and some deals and some completed exits and all that. A lot of times the best way to do that is exactly what you're saying. You might have to give up a little bit more of the deal, but to get it done and to be able to put that on your resume, it makes the lender feel a lot more comfortable that later on, hey, maybe we will do a deal where, the lender will put up 80-90% and you can have some cash and, you made some money on the deal. a couple deals that you partnered with, and then it puts you in a position to be more bankable or be a better fit for a lender. So definitely, that's fantastic advice.
And last year, first time in my career in a long time, there weren't necessarily every lender sitting out there ready to do some deals on the time schedule that needed to be done. So I ended up having to build one $5 million house in Northridge in cash. Thank God it's closing in a couple of weeks. But I had a subdivision I had to end up buying the dirt in cash up front. Now that I sold the land next door in a subdivision I developed, now banks are begging me to get to do the A&D. So I had to rest cash there for a short period of time. I'm not going to look at my pro forma and say it didn't return what percentage because I paid cash for it, because I'm only going to have my cash there for a lunch date, and I'm going to take it back out. But I had to put it there for the lunch date because I've already got it teed up. It's done, and no banks wanted it at the time because what I'm selling the lots for next door, by the way, in Franklin County, the most expensive lot before I just sold the 50 I sold next door to this ever to sell in Franklin County was $120,000, and I just sold 50 for $145 next door with a 20% true up, so that wherever the house goes, once it's 5 times lot value, they have to pay me on top of that 20% of whatever it goes up. So those lots are going to average 210 before it's over with. And everybody else thought that was stupid and no way to do it. Well, next door now, I've got a piece of dirt looks exactly like this piece of dirt that now banks are begging me to be able to finance, because we just made on the one next door, I told you how you like to do stuff. The one next door, we made 500% return on our investment. So every bank wants a piece of the one next door now.
Yeah, and that goes back to the relationship thing from earlier too, right? Building relationships with lenders and starting that process. I can tell you, when you really need the money is when it's real hard to get it. It's very easy to get money when you don't need it. So building those relationships, starting that process, you can't start too early because you need that stuff to mature a little bit. So fantastic.
And to piggyback on what he just said, the big boys, Bank of America, and I'm not going to mention the other ones, but if you look at the top 6 banks, don't go borrow money from them, because they're going to be the ones that run from you the moment you need help. You need to be doing business with relationship banks, community-based, or one that the people invested in it have some of their own dollars invested in it. But community-based banks are how I've made the majority of my money, because they have to deploy capital wherever they are. But outside of that, I've made my money with folks that don't play the traditional game, because the big boys only play with themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and
do stuff by yourself. If you ever, there was a movie, and I can't remember the name of it, I wish I could, where this guy went insane because he was doing everything by himself. He went absolutely crazy. Go sit in a room and try to figure out everything by yourself without anybody else to talk to. You'll be walking down the street talking to yourself, and people don't know if you're talking to you or them. It will drive you nuts. Somebody else has got to be there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that advice, because that's leverage, right? It would be impossible for you to do all the things you've done without having somebody to take care of some of that. If you had to do every piece, you can't spread yourself that thin and do the amount of volume. So
don't wait till you can afford people. Do it before you can afford them. It'll make you work harder to be able to afford them.
That is great advice. Great advice. Great question, Mike. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Oh, yeah, so I'm just kind of hearing a lot of recurring things, right? Looking for value add, kind of build it, they will come, prove yourself first, and, other people look into it, and, you're building that value. So what are some of the things that you look for or sticks out to you when you're looking at these lots and looking to building these areas, and how do you kind of account for, that 3 years long worth of red tape that comes along with it?
I look, so it depends on whether I'm doing urban infill. If I'm doing urban infill, I look in a 5-block radius around it. If nothing's happened in 5 blocks in every direction around me, now I'm prairie building wherever I go. So if I'm going prairie build, I'm not going to do anything unless I put 3 of them on the ground at one time. Because if you do one in the middle of that area, being a lady and who buys houses, women, not men, right? I mean, we buy what you let us buy, but the reality is y'all are in charge. If you go to a new area and there's one nice big house sitting in the middle of this street, is he going to be able to talk you into moving there? No way. But if there's 2 other ones there, now you know at least you're going to have 2 neighbors you can get along with, and it's great. And it'll encourage you that the rest of it's going to happen. So urban infill, that's the way I think. Now, it's different when you're trying to, I develop everything from high-end houses to low-end, the lowest end. When I'm developing my lowest end lots, I know it doesn't matter where I put them. If I can develop them inexpensively enough to generate a house that's affordable. If it's below $350, I don't care where I go, somebody's going to buy it because there's not any of them to buy. And they're going to drive as far as they got to drive to get to that house, because otherwise they're going to be renters for the rest of their life, or they're going to be stuck living in something that is falling apart instead of something nice, clean, and new. Who doesn't want to be the first person to use a new toilet? Who doesn't want to be the first one to take a shower? I mean, really, think about it. You buy a 70-year-old house, I don't even want to know how many people sat on that seat. Not cool. Hopefully you change the seat beforehand, but anyway.
Great question. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you've spoken about macro affordability, or macroeconomics and triangle. A lot of what you and spoke about was on the high end. You just referenced the low end. Affordability is a big buzzword nationally and locally. We see a lot of build-to-rent coming up as a buzzword as well. Are you involved in any of that? Do you see that happening?
That's a temporary Band-Aid. I'm going to be honest with you. Build for rent doesn't necessarily help a market. It injures a market, because the people who buy build for rent, guess what they do to that builder when they come to buy? They want to be able to buy it from them because they're going to buy them all at one time down here so cheap that guy's not going to make any money. But the builder building it won't know he's going broke until 5 years later, because if you're a builder, you'll have to acknowledge this. You don't know when you paid your last bill whether it was your last bill, because the footing might fail on that house. There's stuff you got to warranty for the next 10 years of your life. Even though we only say it's 1 year, you let a major system on that house fail and you let them have a friend downtown, you won't build again until you fix whatever it is. It's a problem. I think there are a lot of folks out there doing it, and there are a lot of people who are deploying capital from overseas here to do it with, that it's going to implode and explode in some of the areas they're doing it at, because they're going and buying build for rent in areas. I said you can go anywhere and do it, not as far away as they're doing it. They're going out in the middle of nowhere. I can show you. I'm from the middle of nowhere. I grew up in Samora, North Carolina. That is still, you hear the banjos playing when you drive up there. But out past Samora, which I thought was the end of the planet, out past it in remote areas, people are doing build for rent. And one person, they got a little program on their phone, the guys, because they've been in my car, they got a little program on their phone that goes off and tells them what the rent is nearby when they drive. Because tax records now require you to tell somebody when you're a landlord, right? So when they do that and it goes off, and it went off up there one day when I had them in the back of my car, and it went off at $2,600 a month in an area where the average rental is below $1,000. One went friggin' off. Guess what it was? It was a model home for LGI Homes that was building out in that same area, not necessarily doing build for rent, but something similar to that, where they're taking people out of apartments and put them in houses they couldn't afford out in the middle of nowhere. But that model that they lived in, that they ran their lending out of and everything else, was being rented for $26,000, and somebody bought 225 of those across the street from that, banking on getting that as a rate of return, and built houses double the value of the ones across the street people were living in, and now there's a village of them unrented out there. That happens a lot.
So when you have an investor that wants to be super passive, maybe wants to use their IRA to invest in a deal, what types of rate?
Roth IRA.
Roth IRA.
Roth IRA, not IRA. IRA, what do you do when you pull your money out of it? You pay a penalty. Roth IRA, guess what? I can go invest in something, and when I invest in it, tax-free, whatever that gain is on the return, if I do an assignment agreement with a partner. That's really complicated, but I'm going to tell you what, you want to build your wealth free, tax-free really quick, Roth IRA. Anyway.
I might have a follow-up. But,
call your accountant, and hopefully he's smart enough. If he's too old, get a younger accountant.
well, what type of rates of return are they looking for when they want to be super passive on a deal?
I mean, like, you mean, is there somebody that's just going to give you cash for no reason? Is that what you're saying?
No, like, so let's say, okay, you have a deal that's going to take about a year to maybe fix and flip. The rate of the ROI on it for them would be, what, between 8 to 20?
That's going to be highly subjective. I mean, depending on the person. Right?
Not me.
What on average?
No, I think you're going to struggle finding that, because that in-between person you were working with can now get 5.5%, 5.6% sitting it at a money market. Why are they going to take 9% or 8% with risk when they can make more than half of that risk-free? You know,
it also depends on where they are in the capital stack, what type of risk they're taking, right? If they're the bank, you know, if you're looking at them as the lender instead of going through a traditional lending source, like, yeah, maybe it's going to be low double digits, but you know, if they're equity in its first launch, you know what I mean? It just depends on where they're at. So I think that's going to be it's going to be highly dependent on it.
What I would tell you, and it sounds like you're trying to do just flips, if you're fixing them up, whatever. What you need to do is get a partner where you understand that you're married to them, and they're going out and getting your lending source wherever it is, and you're going to get 50% of the profit, and they're going to get 50% of the profit. There are people that will do that all day with you, if you prove to them you can make money doing it. But they're not going to do anything less than that. It'd be stupid. I mean, all they got to do is call me. I'll let them do it with me. So why are they going to call you?
Okay, so what rates of return do they
I mean, it's not a rate of return. They were looking at 50% of the profit that the thing makes. Yes, sir.
So, do you have any advice for retaining wealth? I've heard of a lot of people that are very, very successful that, you know, they get rich, they lose all their money, they get rich again, and they boast about how I got rich twice, I got rich 3 times. I don't know if that's something that you've gone through, but how have you retained your wealth from going through 08? What did you do to make sure that you didn't have to lose it all and make it back again?
First, I didn't change the lifestyle I lived in to something that was fantasy land. I stayed a normal person that puts your pants on like everybody else, and it didn't blow my head up. Because the biggest thing that happens when you got a partner, when their head won't fit through that door right there, they're not of any use to you anymore, and it happens. Every new person that makes money, for a period of time, they can't get their head in and out of a door because they think they're the coolest thing that there ever was. That's why they go broke again. And, you know, I hate to, again, go back on my faith. I think you go broke again because God's pointing a lesson out to them. Hey, I helped you, and now what'd you do with what I helped you with? And he takes it away just to prove it to them. Now, they might get back up there, but they're not any more likely to keep it the second and the third time either. Just like people who get divorced 3 and 4 times, they don't learn. Those same people that keep going broke don't learn either. You know, they change their lifestyle too quickly and never keep anything in reserve. And they're not patient enough. If I go invest in something and I've got a 3-year window I think I'm going to get my return on, and things go bad, I just got to change the length of time I'm willing to hold it for, which means I have to have set aside enough to carry it or be willing to work hard enough to carry it, or make sure that the lending partner I have understands the economic environment and understands this temporary, and this happened last year to a lot of folks, that if the lender they're doing business with understands the market and isn't predatory, they'll extend that loan with them, or whatever it is, but they still got to service it longer. So it means every deal doesn't work. Like, new investors want to do every deal, and every deal doesn't work. It doesn't pencil, and if it doesn't pencil, great, don't do it.
That was a great question. Guys, I really appreciate all the great questions, and thank you, Jim, for your time. I know we've kept you here a little bit.
That's all right. Appreciate it.
Everybody, feel free to hang out, please.